Fab, thanks, Natalie. Hi, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this training this afternoon. My name's, well, first of all, I'll introduce what we're doing. Emotions and self-regulation this afternoon, and we're looking at identifying and supporting emotions and self-regulation in the early years. So kind of looking at the what, the when, the why, and the how. Um, my boss Claire is here with me in the room. There you go, in the background there. Just to let you know, my name is Martin Cumming. I'm the assistant head teacher at St Paul's Nursery School here in York, and Claire is our head teacher here. And we're going to give you a little whistle-stop tour this afternoon about emotions and self-regulation, which I hope you'll find useful. What I'd like to ask you to do is if you could possibly have a mobile device to hand, because those of you who've been on my training before, I quite like using a Mentimeter. So if you have that to hand in a couple of slides' time, we're going to share a Menti. So part one this afternoon is why are emotions important? So when I was looking through information gathering and things for this presentation this afternoon, I came across a really helpful document which I've put at the end, the last slide of the presentation this afternoon, has a hyperlink to this document, and it's the DFE help for early years providers, and there's a section on emotions in there which is brilliant. Some really helpful hints and some really useful information, and it's quite a quick read, so I recommend you have a little look at it. But what they sort of outline is that the critical part of our work in the early years is to, first of all, understand a child's emotions, why they're feeling what they're feeling, how they're feeling it, and how they're presenting that. So then understanding how this links to behaviors. So whether that's a negative behavior or a positive behavior, and then also see how we then help children to regulate within our settings in schools, which I think is really important in education the way we are where we are at the moment. So really good place to look if you get the opportunity to. So emotions, sorry, my little screen of myself, which I don't really want to see, is just in the way. So I'm just going to move that out of the way so I can actually see. So emotions and learning. So research suggests that if children are unable to regulate or they have poor emotional skills, they're going to find it harder to learn, which doesn't sound like rocket science, but actually, I think sometimes we forget that if children aren't regulated, they're having emotional outbursts or they're having difficulties in regulating their behavior, then actually the potential is that they're not going to be able to learn what you're teaching them, whether that's in early years or throughout. My background is primary, and I know that further up into secondary as well, children need to learn how to regulate their emotions and how we can best support that as practitioners and teachers in settings. And also that if a child is unable to express how they're feeling or how to manage their emotions, this can lead to dysregulation. This can lead to children expressing themselves in different behaviours that maybe we don't want to be seeing in class and in setting. So here's my Menti. So what I'd like you to do, if at all possible, is if you could just have a little scan on that Menti with your smart device. If you've got an iPad or if you've got a phone, just scan the QR code. Or if not, you can close your window and go to menti.com and put in that code. I'm just going to stop sharing. So if you bear with me 1 second, my computer's going a little bit slow this afternoon. I'm going to go across to my Mentimeter and I'm going to start sharing again. If you bear with me a second. Good to see some people have already started putting some things in there, which is absolutely brilliant. Thank you. I'm going to try and get rid of my head at the side of the page again, which is really annoying. So far, the question is, when in setting or in the school day, do you see children showing big emotions? Those big emotions that might lead to dysregulation or to different types of behaviour. So start off, we've got transitions throughout the day. So yeah, transitions through that could just be from handover in the morning, or it could be from group time into going to go for snack and things. We've got straight after lunch or first thing in the morning, fantastic lunch time. When we run out of extra sausages at lunchtime, absolutely. Yes, I would be on that one. Yes, I would. Yeah, if I'm hungry, I'm very much dysregulated, as the staff could probably relate to here at nursery. Um, yeah, we do get big emotions around lunchtime, don't we? Or if somebody's got more chips than the other person, or keeping in line with early years practice, probably just potatoes now. Through transition times when they're tired and hungry, transitioning routines change. Brilliant, thank you. Transitions is a big one, isn't it? Obviously, that's popping up quite a lot. If we put this into a word cloud, I think transitions would be one of those big words in the middle. Transitions, unfamiliar situations when things don't go their way. Brilliant. Yeah, leaving parents and carers in the morning, that anxiety of separation. Yeah. Transitions, lack of understanding, knowing what's coming. Absolutely. As an adult, I find that quite challenging, let alone for small people who we are looking after and teaching. Having to stop doing something fun and going on to do something that might be less fun. I didn't realize how many people were on the call this afternoon. There's lots of answers here. Again, transition, separating from parents, friendship issues, turn taking, toileting. Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. When they leave a toy or an activity for snack or to use the loo and then return and that toy is being used by someone else. Absolutely. We've tried to reduce the amount of times that we tidy up in a day now because actually children want to come back and continue the play that they're doing. Brilliant. When they don't have the words to respond, absolutely. We'll have a little look at that in a little bit. Yeah, unstructured times of the day, break, lunch times, etc. When they're tired, when another child is upset, frustrated, crying or loud, absolutely. Environmental factors, big thing in children feeling big emotions. Send, yeah. Communication and language, yeah. If they've got additional needs or learning differences, yeah, absolutely. When it's not a typical day, Christmas time, absolutely. If everybody's wearing a school jumper and it's not wearing what they're usually wearing, absolutely, yes. Having dirty or wet clothes, we've got quite a few children here who do not like to be wet, even though they like playing with water, which is complicated and challenging in itself, isn't it? That's brilliant. Thank you everyone for sharing those. What I'll do is I'll create a word cloud from this and I'll send them out to Natalie, and Natalie can send those back to you with the slides from this afternoon. So I'm just going to stop sharing and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint. If you bear with me a second. It's when you swap between Teams and Zoom and your buttons are all in different places. That's the thing that's a little bit challenging at times. So, let me start the slideshow again. Brilliant. So, you should be able to see my slides now. So why emotional development matters? So children's personal, social and emotional development, so PSED, one of the prime areas of learning in the EYFS. So it's like one of the biggest building blocks that we are putting into place to help support children and their development through school. It also supports communication, behavior, and relationships. So that interpersonal relationship between themselves and their friends, but also with the adults in the room or even at home and parents, etc. It underpins that school readiness and well-being. That's a big thing that we're looking at the moment with like the best start in life strategy, etc., that's coming out, and the SEND white paper. That school readiness, how ready are children for starting reception when they leave us in the early years? And we're also looking at supporting resilience and confidence, which I think um, is also really challenging to teach, and but helping support that is vital, so we can help support those individuals. So the EYFS states that strong, warm, and supportive relationships with adults enable children to learn, understanding of their own feelings and also those of others. And that's from Help for Early Years Providers, one of the .gov.uk web pages, which is it's a really interesting statement that I think that brings around the thoughts of like that relational support and the impact of having close relationships with staff members in setting as well. So we've also got understanding emotions in early childhood. So young children experience emotions before they can understand them, before they can actually explain them, before they can regulate them independently, which I think is something that we need to look at and how we can help support them in doing that, because it depends on your setting, how young a child, children starting at your setting. Ours here, we've got 2-year-olds, and emotions are big. Emotions are big, and especially when you're not at home and you're in a setting and you're surrounded by people that you might not be that familiar with, feelings of emotion can be big, and feelings of emotion can then present in different ways. So it's trying to help children to understand why they're feeling the way they're feeling, explain to them how they're feeling it and what that's showing us, and also helping them to regulate that independently. So children communicate, and we see this daily. Children communicate through different ways. So they communicate emotions through behavior. They can communicate emotions through their facial expressions. So some children find it tricky to pick up on the nuances of facial expressions, but facial expressions do say a lot. And part of the communication chain that we look at when we're looking at like strategies for speech language and communication, that looks at facial expressions, because actually that is part of communication. It might manifest itself in crying. You might see that through play, but you can also see that through withdrawal as well. So children taking themselves off to somewhere else within a setting that might be a quiet area, but it also might just be that they're withdrawing from people around them, which is something that, we want children to understand and how to regulate their emotions. So there are times where going to a quiet place actually helps support that emotional regulation, but there are other times where we need to make sure that children aren't doing it because they're afraid of the noise or what's happening in the environment. So DFE guidance explains that behavior can be an expression of feelings or emotions. So it can be a reflection of how their emotion is feeling, can come through as behavior. So thinking about what self-regulation is then. So self-regulation is the ability to manage those big emotions that they've got, to control those impulses. So thinking about focusing attention, being able to focus away from something, not letting other things distract them. Thinking about how we adapt our behavior and how we recover from setbacks. So as somebody put in the chat, if somebody's gone to the toilet, they've come back, a little person has taken their toy, how do they recover from that setback? Because they probably wanted to come back and play with that, but somebody else is playing with that now. How do they recover from that? Can they show that resilience that we talked about earlier? So examples including like waiting for a turn, asking for help. So asking for help from a friend, from a peer, or also from the adult or practitioner that's working in the room with them. Coping with disappointment. So that little person coming back from the toilet, recovering from that setback, is going to have to cope with disappointment, the fact that their toy isn't available for them to play with. Following boundaries as well, because we do need to teach boundaries. We need to teach children what's what's seen as right and wrong. We need to teach children on what's acceptable, what acceptable behavior is. And that's one of the things that comes through, which we'll briefly look at later. It's about emotion coaching. You have to be able to label the fact that if something is if somebody's hurting somebody else or doing a behavior that is not um, acceptable within the situation, you've got to be able to label that, and you've got to be able to have that boundary, because we have boundaries in life, and we have to learn those boundaries. And also calming after being upset, so that soothing, that becoming more regulated. And the EEF describes self-regulation as children monitoring their emotions and adapting behavior in different situations, which is very technical speak for thinking why you're feeling the way you're feeling and acting and changing how that emotion is affecting you. Again, that's linked to the EEF, which there's a link there. So EEF evidence, we like to be evidence-based, we like to be research-based, but I can't speak now. EEF evidence suggests that emotional development approaches improve outcomes. Teaching awareness of emotions supports learning. Adult-child interaction is really central and really key to helping support emotional development and self-regulation, and learning skills, thinking about how we could do that. Multiple approaches together are most effective. So some of those approaches that we might be teaching emotions and self-regulation through could be through emotional literacy. So we're talking about how we're feeling, why we're feeling it, and we're modeling that as well. Um, I think sometimes we forget that, if we get upset in a situation, or if something doesn't go wrong and you're doing it in front of children. So for example, I used to, when I was in primary, if something wasn't going well, for example, also this afternoon, if my presentation wasn't working, or my whiteboard wasn't working at school, you might talk through that emotion of how you're feeling. You could just be talking about the fact that actually I'm feeling really frustrated because this isn't working right for me, and I'm feeling really sort of like churny and bubbly inside, and talking about how you're feeling, because actually you're modeling really good practice and really good behavior to children for that. Also thinking about that emotion coaching approach, that relational approach to modeling emotions and behavior. Emotion coaching, brilliant training out there from emotion coaching, which there's a link at the end as well. Again, modeling of behavior, but modeling of emotions and things. So that might even be through stories. It could be through play, structured play. You might be in a small world. You might have role play. You can model that to children. And then also guided conversations about feelings, probably for those children who are a little bit older, who you can have that conversation with. But sitting down and actually talking about how they're feeling, having a one-to-one or a little small group chat. Why did you feel that what made you feel the way you feel? Because we can see, modeling and telling children that we can see what their emotion is telling us, but you're asking them to sort of reaffirm what you're sort of looking at. And that sort of like leads us on to teaching awareness of emotions and feelings. So we're thinking about labeling emotions clearly. So we are setting the example, we're doing the modeling. So I can see that you're feeling sad. I can see that you're feeling sad because such person's gone off with your toy while you were in the toilet. I can see that's making you feel upset. Am I right in what I'm saying there? Are you feeling upset? And then you can talk through how they can feel a little bit better, how they can regulate that. Helping children to recognize feelings. This can be modeled through stories and thinking about, sorry, I've got some children screaming in the background there. Can you model it through stories such as, for example, how did Baby Bear feel when Goldilocks had broken his little chair? or when his porridge had disappeared. You can model it through that as well. And then discussing emotions during everyday experience. So that made me sad, that made me happy when you did that, or actually that made me really sad when you did that, or when that happened. Um, so you're using those emotions and you're labeling them. We also use you can use books as well. So, for example, the Colour Monster we use in Nursery as part of our PSCD, and that's really quite good as well because actually you're not always just feeling one emotion. Sometimes you're that mixed up emotion, that mixed Colour Monster. And then we're thinking about co-regulation before self-regulation. So young children first need to have calm adults. So if you're modeling calmness, uh, you're more likely to have a calm situation in a calm room and a calm children around you. That's not always easy to do. I'm not suggesting that it is, but I am suggesting that calm adults help support um, a feeling of sense of calm. Um, I'm just going to, if you bear with me one second, I'm going to ask Claire just to plug me into the wall because my power is about to die, and I do apologise. There we go. Fantastic, thank you. So the feeling of emotional safety, the feeling that actually, if I'm upset, there's someone around me who cares for me and it is going to help support me to get through this. And it might be something really, really small, but actually just knowing that there's somebody there to help support. Having predictable routines, including consistent boundaries, but having predictable routines. We were talking about this before on the Menti, the amount of people who would put transitions. Actually, transitions are something that we need to be aware of and changing throughout the day. And that responsive relationships with adults that make them feel safe. So, understanding behavior differently. So, asking ourselves, what is the child communicating rather than what is wrong with this child? So, what are they trying to say? What are they trying to show? So, the DFE reminds us that, the DFE guidance, sorry, reminds us that emotional outbursts may reflect unmet needs. Again, it could be a signal of hunger, could be a signal of frustration. Behavior often communicates stress or dysregulation, and adults should remain emotionally available. And then thinking about practical strategies that help support those emotions. So, naming emotions frequently, using it in everyday language, using visuals and emotion cards that you might want to show. Show this is how I think you're feeling. We use emotion cards matching emotions and things like that. The big box of emotions is quite a good tool to use for that. Create calm spaces, use stories, puppets to model language. You might want to teach some breathing strategies or yoga. We do some yoga in our routines here at Nursery. You might want to use visual routines to support transitions. We talk a lot about using visuals to help support those transitions and supporting turn taking as well and modeling that in play. One of the DFE statements, which we'll very briefly touch on in a second, just talks about the fact that can somebody turn take in play. And then model problem solving as well. I've got a problem. This is how I'm going to get out of it, or this is how I'm going to solve this problem. And then you've got the idea of emotion coaching as well. So noticing the emotion the child is feeling, you're validating that feeling, you're naming the emotion, you set boundaries if needed, and then you problem solve together. How can you manage it together? So, for example, I can see you're upset because you wanted the toy. It's okay to feel upset. So you're validating the fact that they're feeling upset. Can't let you hit. That's your boundary. Let's think about what we can do instead. And then you can also do that in role play as well. So play supports emotional development because children explore their feelings safely, they practice social interaction, they're learning empathy, they're solving problems, and they're also developing resilience as well. So I'm aware that our time is ticking on, so I've got about 4 minutes left. So part two kind of brings us to self-regulation. It's really important to teach children the skills to self-regulate, as there may not always be an adult there to support them. So we've thought about helping relational regulation. So we're now thinking about how we do self-regulation. And we haven't got a huge amount of time now, so I'm going to let you pause and reflect at another point. But if you think about what do you have in your setting that supports children to regulate? So these are a couple of areas in our nursery at the moment. The sensory room hasn't been set up in this one, so the cushions are usually over the floor, but we've got quiet spaces. We have got a sensory room with padded floor, so the children can lie on it. They can regulate on it. The pod down in the right-hand corner, that big turquoise pod, is like a pea pod that you can sit in, and some of our children like to feel that cocoon feeling. And then we've got our little cat. What's the cat called again, Claire? Bob. Bob the cat. And he's sitting on a weighted blanket. And Bob is weighted as well. And if you press his back, he purrs and vibrates slightly. And it's lovely because it actually really does help to regulate. I'm not sure whether that's just helping us adults regulate or whether it's helping the children as well, but it's a good way. And then also thinking about those sensory toys that you can use. So you've got sensory spinners, you've got trampolines. Don't be afraid to bring the outside in. We've had trampolines in. We've got a new setting now, it's just been rebuilt, but our trampolines outside. But we've had trampolines inside before. The little ones that you can one-person ones, really good to help children who are dysregulated help to regulate. And also the spinners, not that expensive if you go on TikTok shop, not on commission, but there we go. That's one of the good places to find them. And the children just love having that ability to regulate. And some of our children go out and they go and self-regulate. They know what they need to do, how they need to do it, and they'll go and do it. And that's something that we need to try and teach them. Very, very quickly in the last minute or so, I just want to think about the role of assessment as well. If you haven't seen them, the DFE SEND assessment statements are absolutely brilliant tools, especially for those children who have SEND or any learning differences, but it really does look in depth at emotional regulation as well. So, for example, it's looking at social skills, regulation, awareness of self. And it's a really good tool that you can use to assess how children are. You don't need to use all four of the broad areas of need. You could just use, if you've got a child who is dysregulated, you could just use this one statement sheet, which are linked, as I say, in the end of the PowerPoint. But you can use these, and they're graded from emerging to supported to independent, and your child gets a score for which one they're looking at, and you can use that over the time that you've got the child in setting, pass it on to their next setting if they're moving up to school. But it's a really good way of tracking what children can do and what they find difficult. And you can also use these statements then in a My Success Plan or an individual support. So I'm not going to go through these now. I'll just quickly read them out, but I'd like you to reflect, maybe take some time after you've gone home and made the tea, or tomorrow when you're back in work, but just reflect and think about your own setting in school. Which children may benefit from additional emotional support? So you might have an you might have an ELSA trained person in your setting. Have a talk to them who you might identify as needing emotional support. Which areas of the SEMH assessment tool are the strongest in your setting, and which ones could you do with working on a little bit? How confident are staff in recognising emotional needs? Is it something that you need to do for some further staff training or professional development? As I say, I can really recommend the emotion coaching course, which has been a game changer, which is great. And how could assessment better inform your planning, especially around self-regulation, emotional regulation, and behaviour? And these are just some useful resources that you could use, that you can go and have a little look at. Most of them are kind of 5-minute reads, including the Education Endowment Foundation one about PSCD. It's got 4 areas which are really great just to have a little look at. That just brings me to, I've gone 2 minutes over. So that just brings me to a really big thank you for coming this afternoon. I hope you found it useful. If you've got any questions, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. Or if you want to put them in the chat, or I can stay on for a couple of minutes at the end. But if you'd like to stop recording now, that would be great. Thank